You ever been in a situation that you know you shouldn't have been in, and God had to literally force you out because he knew that you wasn't going to move, that you had become comfortable in that situation? Well, today we're talking about Lot in Genesis 19. You know, we've been talking about breaking cycles, and last week we talked about Abram and Terah, his father, who had settled in Haran. And I want to talk about Lot today in Genesis 19, verses 15 through 17, because we see there's a pattern there. And there was a characteristic that Terah had that now his grandson Lot was carrying on too. And so the Lord stepped in to intervene, and basically Lot and his family was in Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham had been interceding on Lot's behalf, and the prayers, the prayers of the righteous availing much, right? And so Abraham had been interceding and asking and talking to God, if you found one there, would you still destroy it? And so he asked a couple of times, but anyway, Lot, the angels of the Lord came to visit Lot, and it said in verse 15, when the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, arise, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. So it came to pass and while he lingered, verse 16, it says, and while he lingered, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his two daughters, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. And Lot had, they had already warned him, and Lot was like, let me go tell my son-in-laws, and the son-in-laws laughed at him. But it was that part in verse 16 where it says Lot lingered. And I went to the Strong Concordance and looked up that word lingered, and it means to be reluctant, tarry, delay, wait. So even in the midst of destruction, Lot was still being reluctant. He was still tarrying, to leave the city, knowing that destruction was about to take place. And it just baffled me. I know we always talk about Lot's wife who looked back and turned to a pillar of salt, but so many times we don't talk about the part where he lingered. He was still hesitant about coming out of the place that he had been comfortable in, knowing that that city was about to be destroyed. And so many of us are lingering in relationships, lingering on jobs, lingering in situations and circumstances and friendships where God has been calling us to come out because destruction is near. Right? And so we've been waiting, and we've been probably waiting for validation from someone else because we don't really trust ourselves. We've been waiting on, someone else to give us the green light when God has already spoken to you to leave that situation or circumstance because destruction is about to hit, and you're either going to leave by force or by choice. And I love that it said God was merciful. And this angels must have had like 4 arms. Like this wasn't no regular being, right? Because it says that it took the hand of Lot, the hand of his wife, and the hand of his daughters. And so he was adamant on getting them out because of the prayers of the righteous, right? But even in the midst of destruction, even in the midst of things happening, the Lord said, I'm going to force you out of here because I don't want you to be destroyed. We're not going to be like your grandfather who settled in a place, but I need you to go because there's still purpose for you. There's still a plan for you, and there's still a promise that you have to there's still a promise that you have to get even in the midst of you being hesitant. So whatever situation that you found yourself in, I want to encourage you to leave because either you're going to leave by choice or God is going to force you out of that situation. And so here's what we can learn, from this. And I know from experience that there's been situations, especially when I worked my 9 to 5, where God was like, it's time for you to leave this place. But I was comfortable there. And then things started to happen. I had encounters and altercations, letting me know that it was time for me to leave. And so the Lord said, okay, since you don't want to leave, I'm going to force you out of here because this is not your final destination. This is not the last place that I want you to be, but I have something greater for you. Right? So whatever your situation may be, and you've been seeing the red flags from the friendship and from the relationship, but you still wanting to stay there because you don't want to be alone, because you're afraid of being abandoned, you're afraid of being rejected, so you don't want to say anything. And that job is stressing you out, and God is telling you to apply for the position that you're not even qualified for, because you don't know the favor that is on your life. You're going to settle there, and you're going to take the hell that you've been going through until you get uncomfortable and frustrated enough to say, you know what, I'm going to leave. This must be God telling me that my time is up here. And we got to have the spirit of discernment. And I don't think Lot really discerned what was happening. Right? So this is what we can learn from the situation with Lot when it comes to breaking these cycles, these generational cycles and cycles that we found ourselves in. Right? Number one, avoid the pull of the past. Avoid the pull of the past. You know, in order to break cycles, we must fully release the past. Hence why Lot's wife wasn't willing to release the past, which is why she looked back, because she had become comfortable there. Maybe she didn't want to leave the friends and the family, you know, that they had there, the friends that became family, you know, that was there. Or maybe she didn't want to leave the house that they had built together. Right? And a lot of us are still in the same cycles because we're embracing the pull of the past. Every time something happens, we're looking back. But we have to avoid the pull of the past in order to break the cycles that we found ourselves in. We have to release the past in order for us to move forward. Right? So number two, letting go of the familiar. The places that you're in are familiar to you. And when something is familiar, you're comfortable there. So breaking cycles requires leaving the familiar and stepping into the unknown. Even when God was speaking to Lot, even when the angels, right, was speaking to Lot to leave, Lot was still like, you know what? Instead of taking us all the way there, I want to settle at the nearest town. Because he wasn't fully willing to let go of the familiar. He was willing to settle in the nearest town because he wasn't ready to fully step into what God had called for his family. And a lot of us are still, you know, dwelling in the familiar because it's comfortable there, because it's us knowing that, you know, I can remain here and not be bothered. Right? So we'll settle for the familiar, and being in the familiar allows us to repeat the cycle continuously. It keeps us on that emotional roller coaster, right? And so we have to let go of the familiar in order for us to break cycles that we are in. Number three, there's an urgency in obedience. Lot lingered knowing that they could have been destroyed there. So in order for us to break cycles, breaking cycles require immediate action. Yes, we don't know what's on the other side, but immediate actions is what is going to require, you know, what is required to break the cycle that we found ourselves in. You know, sometimes they say in order to, sometimes you got to rip the Band-Aid off, right? Instead of just pulling it off, you got to rip it off and it won't sting as much, right? And so it requires us to have radical obedience. Have radical obedience when it comes to what God is asking us to do. So yes, it may be uncomfortable. Yes, it may be unfamiliar to us, but there's an urgency in you obeying, because in your obedience is the blessing that God has for you. So no longer delay. No longer settle with where you are in, you know, carrying on the cycles that you repeated year after year. You don't have to wait to January to break the cycle. Now is the time to start breaking the cycle, and it's going to take steps. It's going to take you doing what God is asking you to do. You can trust yourself. You are capable of doing it. Yes, you may have made mistakes before, but guess what? God is guiding you. Trust the voice that's on the inside of you. Trust God, because he's going to lead you in the way, you know, in where you should be going. And so I just think this is so imperative in the times that we live in, because a lot of us are repeating cycles and we're wondering, God, what is happening right now? Why can't I break this thing? Because you haven't surrendered, because you haven't fully given your yes, because you still dabbling, you know, with one toe in, and you're saying, I don't think I can do this. But God is there to help you. By the grace of God, you are able to overcome the obstacles that you are faced with. So I pray that this has blessed you. I am D. Latoya Matthews, your freedom ambassador, and I am on a mission to propel women into true freedom. And it's going to take breaking cycles. It's going to take you, knowing what God has spoken and trusting what God has said. And so if this message has blessed you, please share it. Please repost it. Please subscribe, because we're going to be doing this every week here on this channel. And I'm just going to be bringing things that the Lord has brought, to me. And this month has just been all about breaking cycles. And so, until next time, be blessed.